Latter-day Saint Views of the Civil Rights Movement by Robinson Bracken. Okay, so starting off with Joseph Fielding Smith. So he held controversial views on race and blacks in the priesthood, and many of these views influenced Bruce R. McConkie, who was his son-in-law, but he did oppose segregation. So he said that blacks should receive, quote, all the rights and privileges as declared as in the Declaration of Independence. And he went on to say that black people shouldn't be barred from any type of employment or education. And he said that they should be free to make their lives as happy as it is possible without the interference from white men, labor unions, and from any other source. So David O. McKay, so he was under public pressure by civil rights organizations like the NAACP to end the priesthood ban. And he said, quote, I'm badgered constantly about giving the priesthood to the Negro. I've inquired of the Lord repeatedly. The last time I did it was late last night. I was told with no discussion not to bring the subject up with the Lord again, and that the time would come and that it would not be in my time, and to just leave the subject alone. And so he ultimately never gave in to public pressure because he said that he consulted with the Lord, but he said, there is not now, and there never has been a doctrine in this church that the Negroes are under a divine curse. There is no doctrine in the church of any kind pertaining to the Negro. We believe that we have scriptural precedent for withholding the priesthood from the Negro. It is a practice, not a doctrine, and the practice will someday be changed. And that's all there is to it. So in the 1963 General Conference, the NAACP and other civil rights organizations, they threatened to protest the 1963 October General Conference because of the priesthood ban. And Apostles Eldon Tanner and Hugh Brown, they met with NAACP leaders in order to calm tensions between the two organizations. And the NAACP leaders told Eldon Tanner and Hugh Brown that they would protest the conference unless the church made a statement that was in support of the civil rights movement. So after meeting with NAACP leaders, Eldon Tanner and Hugh Brown wanted to make a statement in General Conference that showed support for the civil rights movement. And they sought approval from President David O. McKay, and he ultimately approved of it, but he made it clear that he didn't want it to be an official pronouncement of the first presidency. And so the statement was read by Hugh Brown in General Conference before his talk at General Conference, and was read in a way that made it seem official. And the statement, it calmed tensions between the church and the NAACP as they did not stage a protest. So with Ezra Taft Benson, so immediately following Hugh Brown's statement, Ezra Taft Benson began by giving speeches calling the civil rights movement a communist plot. And as we learned in Brother Stewart's class, the civil rights movement was not a communist plot, but we did learn that there was a heavy influence by the Communist Party within the civil rights movement. So we can kind of see where he's coming from. But soon after these speeches, he was appointed to oversee the European mission. And Apostle Joseph S. Smith, he actually privately expressed that he hoped that his new appointment would calm his radical views. And when he returned from his mission, he gave an inflammatory speech in the 1965 General Conference, and it ended up having parts of it removed from official church publications. In the 1967 General Conference, as an apostle, he said that the civil rights movement was a communist plot led by white men who sought to destroy America by shedding Negro blood. And his talk was published the following year by Desiree Book in a pamphlet called Civil Rights, a Tool of Communist Deception. And as you can see, this slide is pretty booked, but another thing that he said in the book, he said that there was nothing wrong with civil rights, but it was what was being done in the name of civil rights that he, in his opinion, was opposed to. So Gordon B. Hinckley, he was Benson's counselor and close friend. He sought to distance himself from Benson's extreme political views and his ties to the John Birch Society, which was a radical group within the conservative movement that saw the civil rights movement as communist. Utah had become one of the last states to recognize Martin Luther King Day, as Benson wanted it to be recognized as, quote, Human Rights Day. This all changed when Hinckley became president of the church. And so he sought to repair relations with the NAACP, and he reached out to the leaders behind the scenes, and he gave a speech at the 1998 NAACP convention, which was the first time that a Latter-day Saint leader had given a speech at the convention. And so this kind of kicked off a good relationship with the civil rights organizations like the NAACP and the church. And so his actions, they ultimately influenced the church's relationship. with them today. As you can see here, Russell M. Nelson giving a talk at the NAACP convention. And that is my research project on Latter-day Saint views of the civil rights movement.